Hey guys, I'm Ink, and I will be doing an emoji challenge where I turn 3 emojis into a character. So this is the first one that I came up with. This is a mask, a nut, and a little, or is it a nut? I don't know, things like this. And a little chick. So the first thing that I knew I wanted to do was that I knew I wanted to do something steampunk, because that way I could tie together the mask and the nut. And I'm gonna keep calling it a nut, even though I'm not sure that's what it is. So as you can see here with the drawing, I did a pose and now I'm starting with the goggles because that's very classic steampunk. Here I have the mask, which serves to, you know, it's representative of that devil mask from, or not devil mask, but the mask in the emoji. I was struggling a bit with the expression here because I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted this character to feel like. I ended up settling on something a little smug because I wanted this feeling of like an amateur who thinks that they're better at their job than they actually are. So that's kind of the chick idea, in the sense that it's like, oh, this character is still very young and inexperienced, but believes that they're a lot more skilled than they in reality are. So I'm just adding a few more details here. I usually jump straight to the line art from my sketches. So this is really just me playing around a little bit. I actually kind of cheated because I have designed each of these. I'm doing 3. I designed each of them in advance because I didn't want to end up doing a lot of different drafts and kind of making the video boring. So I did already have an idea in mind for what this character would look like. I'm particularly attached to this detail with the kind of belts that are hanging off of the waistcoat. I also did classic rider boots because if you didn't know, steampunk is kind of a combination of the Victorian era and the idea that this is what people would look like if we never stopped using steam. Okay, this detail I actually quite like as well. These little wings here, that's my biggest tie-in to the chick, because like, as a bird, there are these kinds of wings that are attached to the arms so that they fan out when the character opens their arms as well. Now we're just doing a few more details here and there before we get right into the coloring. So there's blush, there's, you know, all of these simpler things. As I'm coloring, let me explain a little bit more about the idea behind the colors. I actually had to Google a steampunk color palette because I wasn't 100% sure what steampunk colors were. And luckily I found a few of them that used yellow, which was good because again, I wanted to tie into the chick. I definitely wanted to keep these colors simple. I think what you'll notice is that I reuse a lot of the colors. So for example, the gold would be the same color, the same yellow shade as her hair. Then here I'm just coloring in the wings, again using the same shade as the hair, and adding these big long fingerless gloves, which I thought were kind of cool. And lastly, I'm just adding a bit of red to the lenses, and then just finishing details, adding a little bit of shading and highlighting, and that's pretty much it for this character. So this is, just give it a second. After I finish shading everything, this is the final design. Okay, so next we have an arrow, a little sheepish little face emoji, and a ring. I knew immediately upon seeing the arrow and the ring that I wanted to do like a love core kind of Cupid sort of character, and with the emoji I was thinking very sheepish as well. So in contrast to the last one, where I had a newbie at their job who was very, very confident about what they were doing, even though they maybe shouldn't be, I had a character who was new at their job and is very, very unconfident. Doesn't really know what they're doing quite yet. So that was the concept for this one. As you can see here, I'm doing like really big eyes. I love doing big eyes on a character, to the point where I actually had to shrink them because they were getting a little too big. And generally I do just like the big doe eyes, especially as an example of like here's a character who doesn't really know what's going on. I also have the little sweat drops there. The hearts in the hair are actually details that I stole from other character designs I have, particularly Mrs. Lovett, and then the 2 strands in the ponytail that make a heart I stole from a design that I have for a character that I'm fond of but don't really ever post about. So next I'm doing the big sweater paws. I wanted, I googled lovecore outfits in order to really create this design well, and I love sweater paws. I think they are so cute. I also love the cropped sweater vibe, so I have that. This is just me doing the arrow and then adjusting it so that it looks like it's in the hand instead of just on it. I actually struggled here with the arrowhead because I had to trace it from the sketch because it was not working out the way I wanted it to. Then we have a skirt here. Actually, I don't know how I feel about the design of the skirt, especially because originally I was gonna give this character stockings, but she told me in my brain basically that the skirt was cute, and then I also added these really chunky sneakers because, again, it's cute, it's lovecore, you know, it adds to the aesthetic of a character who's very nervous. I love the thick thighs. I definitely enjoyed drawing that. Then I added these wings because, again, Cupid, I wasn't sold on them at first, but I realized that they kind of make her silhouette into a heart, and I loved that, so I kept them. They're not super detailed because, again, the focus wasn't really on the wings so much as it was on the design itself. So now it's time for coloring. I don't really have much to say about skin tone or things like that. I think mostly I just got really excited about using pinks and reds, because if you didn't notice from literally everything I've ever posted, pink is absolutely my favorite color. So here, this is another good example of me using the same shades all over the design in order to have this cohesive color palette. So like, you'll notice that I had the same shade of pink for the hair as the same shade of pink for the eyes. Then the lighter color is the highlight in the eyes. I really, really wanted to do the undercut being a lighter color than the rest of the hair, which would have worked better if I didn't give her a ponytail, but we'll, you know, life goes on. Then we have the sweater. It's actually kind of inspired by a sweater that I own in real life with the red, like, sort of trim. And then I have the skirt be the same shade of red as the collar and the sleeves. And then, of course, the white for the wings. And then the sneakers next, yes. So chunky sneakers. I actually kind of wish I had a pair that looked like this because I think it's adorable with the red streaks and then the little hearts on the soles. So this character, who is already very small, is actually even smaller than that because the soles of the shoes are so chunky. So I'm just doing my final details here. I added a little bit of shading to the wings because I realized that they didn't look quite right just being that bright, and then I just added my final shading, and here she is, this nervous little Cupid character. Lastly, I have a little lollipop, a girl, and a flower. This one was the most difficult one for me, and I think you'll be able to tell based on the process. I actually struggled with the pose and with the idea of it. But okay, so definitely another confident character, because I like the idea of using the flower as turning this character into like a fairy. So I googled flower dresses or flower inspired dresses, and I came up with this character who is fairy adjacent. I wouldn't call her a fairy necessarily because she doesn't have wings, but I think the final design ended up all right considering how much trouble I had with it in the first place. So here's me adding the lollipop. I guess the character just really likes candy. I couldn't find a way to tie it in any more than I already had. Even though I think maybe if I change anything, I could have played with the idea of it being like Halloween, and this is just a costume, and maybe like there's a bucket of candy or something to that effect, but too little too late. The pigtails, I wanted big poofy pigtails, so I went with that. The hand, and then, oh yeah, I also had these giant sleeves, very much inspired by Hatsune Miku. I thought they were cute. I figured that, like, if you look at that, I think that's on one of her character designs, so I may have ripped that directly unintentionally. Then I have just drawing the hand here. I think soon I work on the skirt and the top of the corset or like bodice. You'll notice that this is a little bit similar to what I did with the first one. I recognize that. I just am very fond of corsets. There, now I'm doing the skirt. So you'll notice all of these, that the skirt looks like flower petals that are fanning out. At least that was the intention. And then at the top of the corset bodice thing, I'm not a fashion designer, guys, I have a few more petals, so it's really just tied down to that, and then underneath is just more and more petals that create the layers of the skirt, like a petticoat almost. Yeah, and resizing the head and the hand because they were too big. I should have done that earlier in the process, but I thought that it would be fine. Then the legs. I mentioned earlier I struggled with the legs. That struggle continues. I did not draw them well in the sketch, so I had a hard time making them work in the line art. This is just a word of warning to everyone who wants to do something the way that I do it. You will have to add more detail into your sketch. I wanted to make it a nice, quick drawing so that it would fit into like a good YouTube video. Okay, now we're getting into colors. Again, I struggled with the skin tone here. I had to desaturate it a significant amount. And these are just, you know, the general things that I do. You'll notice that I add these darker parts on the cheeks, the shoulders, the knees, and the knuckles. Then just a little bit of blush, but I make it not super visible because, you know, darker skinned character. The hair I didn't want to be black, so I went for this kind of reddish brown. And then for the colors here, again, just to keep the color palette consistent, I'm using the same shades of pink. Of course it's pink, because pink is my favorite color, as previously mentioned. And then the flowers, I originally just wanted them to be white, but I realized I didn't like how simple that was, so I added some pink to the inner corners, and then here I'm adding white to the outer side of the petals. And then, yeah, darker shade of pink for the bodice, same color as the lollipop. And that's pretty much it. So this is, I'll just give it a second. This is the final design. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.